That sounds good. That sounds good. And everybody has a story. And I have seen this granddaughter of Dad's Kroshus for 60 years.
That's right. Have you seen her now again?
Yeah, I see her now, but I'd lost track of her. I knew she was married, and I knew they lived down near Cedar Rapids or Waterloo at one time, but I didn't know they'd moved back here. And I knew her married name. And for one time, for something to do, I was looking through this US West telephone directory.
You're on film, Marty.
And soon before, Thelma. Interesting. Her name and their name and
We got Jim on there. Jim Wilhelmson.
See, there's a little.
We got you, Jim.
There's a little. When you put it out with it, you tighten it up, so the camera sags a little bit. So you got to go farther than what you think you can do, because the camera will sag a little bit.
No, they're not a decorum. Oh, I see. Yeah.
Here it is.
Oh, yeah. What did you do?
That's pretty fancy.
I can put it over there, and then you guys can sign your name.
Twins just started watching me. Now they're 8 still. But
Okay, we better.
something just fell on it the other day and busted her handle off. And then something, this handle busted off.
Here, we'll put it in here.
She's still good.
You sign your name.
It's fun to watch the old movies now.
Go crap? Och välkommen.
My children say that.
Visst så ska vi... Kom in. Have a chair. And welcome. Tonight our meeting is going to be a little bit different. It isn't going to be the reading of Norwegian as we usually do, unless we have time later. How many brought a story they would like to tell, to share with us tonight? Okay. No, you aren't the only one. No. Maybe as we get going, you'll be more willing to come up and share your stories with us. I am sure many of you, as I have been told by our grandchildren, tell me a story. Tell me a story. And as you sit on the edge of their bed, or as you hold them in your lap and rock them and cuddle them in that way, you've told many a story as well. And this is important because this is our way of letting our grandchildren know, or even our children, letting them know about their history, teaching them about their ancestors. I know my little ones, they'll say, tell me about Daddy when he was little, or tell me about you and Grandpa when you were little. And this is a good time for us to build a foundation for them and let them know a little bit about their ancestors. And as we do that, they will, and even as they grow older, because at Christmas time, I will tell them a story. And now I have started to bring in the stories of our ancestors. Like last year for Christmas, I told about my great-grandma Bertha that came from Somme, and I told them about my family that came from Somme. And it was surprising how very interested even the older children were. They sat there and they listened very intently. And because it was told to them, they're going to remember some of these things about our family. And you know, as we hear these things, it makes us feel good too. Because I remember telling a story up at the senior site, and in so doing, after I was through telling this story, little statements were made. One in particular I remember, and that was about my Grandma Bertha. He said, you know, I used to visit your Grandma Bertha when I was young, he said. And, you know, I couldn't get over her floor. It was so shiny, but that if it had been today, you would have thought that it had been waxed many a time, he said. And to me, that was very important, and it made me feel good. It made me kind of know something about her, I thought. So we kind of made personal contacts with our ancestors if we can hear stories and if we tell stories. And if you hear that they have maybe had a special thing, a hobby of some sort, and then here you kind of connect with them. Because I remember I heard that my great-great-grandfather was a tailor, and that he owned the first sewing machine in the area that he was from. And so for that reason, it made me feel kind of good that I liked to sew, and it was sort of a bonding, or sort of brought us together. And so that's kind of important. So if your children hear that their ancestors had special interest in whether it be guns or horses or carving or anything else, it's kind of a bonding, and it's kind of up to us to let them know about these things so that they can share their heritage. And this storytelling is one of the first creative arts, really. Because when you look at generations ago, how the minstrels would travel about Europe or wherever, and they would tell these stories, and the stories would be passed on because not too many could read. By then they passed on these stories, and this is the way then that people learned about things that was going on in the country. And there was like the Skalds. Look at how they traveled with the Vikings and came back and told of the adventures. And these stories were handed down from generation to generation, and it took several hundred years before the monks wrote the Norse saga of the Norsemen, I believe it is called. And so, see, storytelling is important, and so we have to keep these things in mind. And when you hear a story told, it is good, because you become involved with it. You hear the voice, and you can feel the emotions, and you can feel the excitement in someone telling the story. So to hear a story told is important, and that's why we must continue to tell our stories. And then sometimes when a story is told, it will bring back memories of something that happened in your life that had been completely forgotten about. And so when this comes back to you now, why then it's like a precious memory that's come back to you. So it's a good thing. We must never forget that our memories are important, and that we should bring stories of our families to light. And they should be passed on and on down through generations. It is important for us because in this way we build foundations. And when our children hear the stories, well, then they too will build a foundation. And it is through this foundation that our roots were formed. And our roots were planted across the ocean. And its branches just sort of spread out across the ocean and came here to America. And the branches just kept growing and growing. And so now we are just like little leaves on those branches. But we have to remember that our roots were planted in a foreign land. And by bringing them, all our stories to life here, it brings our ancestors to life as well. Because we tell a story about those we love, or our forefathers, then we bond with them. And that's an important thing, because we feel good about it. We all have two paths to walk. And that's the past, and we have the future. So isn't it a good thing then to know about our past so that we can take that what is good from the past and bring it along with us in the future so that we can make the best of both our paths. And we have to remember that when a story is told, this story comes from the heart, and it is always received into the heart again. So stories are important, and we should tell them. The length of the story is never important, because the story I heard about my grandmother, that was just merely a sentence, but it made me very happy. And for that reason, everybody should tell whatever they know, because it makes you feel so good when you hear these things. I have, I'm sure, maybe all of you have heard me tell the story about my log cabin, but every time I tell it, it makes me feel very good, because it's a time in my life that is very precious to me, and I'm very happy when I think about it. And this story was about when I was a little child, and I call it The Clearing. Have you all heard it? Well, I call it The Clearing because my folks built for us a home, a log cabin, and they made the clearing by cutting down these trees. And it was built on the very northwest corner of Grandpa Boltho's land that he bought when he came here to America in 1852. And it was on top of a cliff. And it had, when I was a child, I thought it had such a strange name, but it was called Berg. And I thought that was a very funny name. But I learned later that it was a nice name. Anyway, this clearing was atop this cliff then. It was a beautiful formation of rock, of course. But within this formation of rock, there was a den of rattlesnakes. So we must always stay within the clearing, Mama said. And this we did. It was a comfortable place to be. I can remember standing in the window looking at Papa as he would split wood, and he'd hold that, he'd keep going with that axe, and I was sure he was going to cut his thumb off at one time or another. And he would, I couldn't get over that big load of wood, He'd put that stick here, and then he'd come carrying it in like that, and just one load is all he had to take, and it filled the wood box. I can remember looking out at him as he split that wood, and big puffs of smoke would be coming out of his mouth because it was cold, see? And so his nose was red, his cheeks were red, and I'd look out the window, and I thought, that snow is beautiful. And it was glistening. You know how it is? The snow glistens, and I used to think just like the fairies had sprinkled some sparkles all over that snow. I thought it was beautiful. I can remember just watching Mama grub out a stump left over from the logs that they had cut down to build our house. And I can just see all these fun things. I can remember Papa going on his skis, getting us a Christmas tree. And I thought that tree was the most beautiful tree I'd ever seen in my life. But there was one time in particular that I remember, and that was when we were watching Mama pick strawberries. Mama had a big strawberry patch on the east side of the house. and she'd pick these big dish pans full, a white granite dish pan full with all these luscious strawberries in there, you know. And some of those strawberries were as big as my little fist, you know. Oh, they were delicious. I can remember Mom made strawberry sauce and strawberry jam, and we had cream and sugar on our strawberries. But you know, the way I think I liked it the very best was when I squashed those berries on a slice of Mama's homemade bread. Oh, it was delicious, I thought. Anyway, we sat there watching Mom as she picked those berries. And when all of a sudden, Mom stood up and she said, "Berntijn rappel." Well, we knew what that meant. We had heard that before. Anyway, there was a rattlesnake there, but Mama hadn't seen it. But just ahead of Mama, there was a blue butterfly. That butterfly just sat there like this, not moving. And then she saw it. That rattlesnake was right there. She saw the rattlesnake. Papa got rid of that rattlesnake. But you know, Mama never ever forgot about that blue butterfly. And we were told that story many times. So you see, a little story like that is important to me. And that's why I tell it to my grandchildren. And that's why I think every one of you have a wonderful story to tell. And so I hope that all of you will share a story with us tonight. It doesn't have to be a long one. It can just be a short one. Something that will bring back a memory that you can share with someone else. And then we do have a special program this evening because I have invited Jake to start us out this evening. He's got stories for us too this evening that he's going to tell us. So we will invite Jake forward. And my stories are nothing compared to Zake's, let me tell you. But we'll enjoy his and everyone else's as well tonight.
Hey, Geneva, I had asked you, do you know what the name of one of those rocks were down there? Is that a big story? The pulp?
Is that right?
Yep, and it was on one of those cliffs that you're talking about. And that is so high. I own that land. And I know
That's
that.
right, you did.
Yep, and so I know the cabin that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I was never able to get up there. It was that high and that rough to get up on top of.
That's right.
And I heard a story about that there was a young fellow that worked somewhere, and that this is years ago, and he got harmed. And there was a lot of bobcats around, and he didn't dare go all the way for fear of bobcats, so he slept upon that rock for the night.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I had never heard that before. That was interesting for me. It's interesting too because I was never told about there being bobcats. I was only told about being very careful.
Oh yes, and in fact, the 10 years that I owned it, it wasn't until the last fall that it did run into a pair of rattlesnakes up there.
Is there?
Yeah. And that was late in the fall too. I believe it was about the 15th of October. So you know you didn't think you should need to look for them anymore then.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. That's great. Okay, Zig, we'll have you come forward now for our first storyteller for the evening.
Genevieve Tweeten just opened the meeting with beautiful storytelling. This is March 19th, 1996. We're in a room right across from the office in Spring Grove Public School. Luckily we got by the 17th of March, which was St. Patrick's Day. And this happens to be a new moon tonight, and I think these Norwegians sure are pretty high-spirited, so I'll be signing off now, and Sig's going to do a little talking.
Well, thank you, Geneva, and good evening. I'm sorry, I didn't prepare a thing. I guess I hadn't given it much thought, and when Geneva called me this afternoon, I had just thought I was going to say a Norwegian word or so, and I really am unprepared. So I hope that you can bear with me. I like stories and stuff like that too. And unfortunately, this past week, a few days ago, I caught a cold. And by God, it's developed into a big horse. But if I start coughing, don't get worried. I might start coughing. I get a coughing spell. Don't get worried, because it isn't a cough to get you, it's a coughing to carry off and it gets you. So it's not really anything to worry about. And I am kind of lost. I should, when I think of it, until I get my teeth fixed, I shouldn't get up and talk to anybody like this, see? I should have taken the advice of the little girl that advised Abraham Lincoln. Did you hear that story? Abraham Lincoln, and a little girl come up to Abraham Lincoln and says, she said, "You're the homeliest man I've ever seen." And Abraham Lincoln says, "Well, I'm sorry," he said. "I can't help it." And she says, "Yes, but at least you could stay home." I kind of feel that way. Because till I get my teeth, I should smile, but I kind of try to make it. So that I'll have to do sometime. Well, I do like stories.
You want to borrow my teeth, say?
You have to borrow your teeth.
What?
Did you get it?
And I do like quotations. I like stories. And I know talent myself. And I wish I could write. I wish I could paint pictures. And I wish I could draw cartoons and things like that. But I have no talent. But there is one thing I have that I'm very proud of. I am able to enjoy the talents of others. And I think that's a great thing. Because with all the talent that people are, you can listen, and that's what makes life enjoyable. So that way I'm fortunate. Like I say, I do like quotations. I like Shakespeare. I don't think there was any man in history that could give out more wisdom in fewer words than Shakespeare. I always liked his quotations. Like he'd say, let me see some of the quotations. He'd say, the world is all a stage. The people in it merely players. They have their entrances and they have their exits. And he said, he who steals my purse is trash. But he who filches from me my good name steals from me that which not makes him rich, but makes me poor indeed. And a coward dies 1,000 deaths. The valiant die but one. And neither a borrower nor a lender be better off, that alone loses both itself and a friend. And borrowing dulls the edge of husbandry. And this above all till thyself be true, and thou canst not then be false to any man. Then I always like this too. What's in a name? A rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So I added my own line to that, which probably isn't nice. But a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. A turd by any other name would stink to sin. That was my Shakespeare. See? So we think about the Norwegians. We talk about Shakespeare. But I think about the Norwegians. We have a lot of great Norwegians. We have a lot of authors and writers and stuff that came out with a lot of intelligent things. I wish I could remember all the quotes and stuff. But I know a lot of you know that somebody has said, which makes a lot of sense. And, it was Björnson and Björnson, Vergrud. They told a story about Vernon when he was just a little boy, sitting in the class, and he was sitting there dozing. And the schoolmaster noticed that, and he thought he wasn't paying attention. So he shot a question at him like that. And Bergrud woke up like that. He said, "Vad är livet?" And Bergrud said, "Vad är livet? Ett pust i sivet, och en spel av krafter, och en hägenefter, en evighet. Now, if you want me to translate that to you, must you understand Norwegian, don't you? Really translating it, simple words would be, you ask him, what is life? And the boy got up and he says, what is life? It's a breeze through the weeds or the reeds. But then there's a small display of strength. And after that, home in eternity. Just a little few words are meant a lot. So when I talk about the Norwegian stuff that I know in Norwegian, you know, a lot of these quotations, some are pretty good and some aren't. Some aren't too nice. So I hope you don't get offended when I say some of them. But you know, we'll say, well, anyway, have you heard han Ola Patola som company här? Stäckta och drumma till eftersvän. Have you heard that? Och till Tara, imorgon ska vi fara, högt upp i djupaste dagen. Där är det ingen väte, där är det gott och hjärte, där är gauken, där växer luken, och där dansar sula med en gurinkligt huda. I don't know if you understand this Norwegian as I'm preaching or not, but det är så friskt och sätevången vid morgontid. Den är lite lufter som en sång, skönt den kan bida. Och fredigt toner lurens klang i fället vida. And what did I say? I forget what I said. You know, that's another bad thing when you get old and start forgetting. Well, mitt ju vill ha mig och fan vill ha präd. You want to translate that into English? I can't quite translate it, but much wants more. But the devil wants more yet. So that doesn't sound too good in English. A lot of these things don't sound too good when you translate them from Norwegian into English. And, yeah. Akkurat. Som har på en snösvenska. That is going to be pretty exact. You know that. You understood that. Exactly, just like a bald-headed Swede. You know, nothing on it. And then, oh yeah. Some hostess news is a reva back. You understand that? Probably it isn't so nice. But there's a lot of truth to that. It's really true. Yeah. Then I thought, Paste sure somehow over to grisen. Så that's så farligt till mig. And there's a lot of little things in Norwegian. I don't recall them all. You know, in English they say they lock the barn door after the horse has been stolen. The Norwegians they say de jagar ett hund mellan fisi. So the Norwegians they got a few little things that are pretty good. I don't know if I can think anymore or not, but there's a lot of them. I won't recall them all. If it's just two tricks, it maybe come out, I think. Yeah. I think a little bit about how it was when I was young, how things have changed. I remember I started to school, and of course the schoolhouse was pretty small at that time. It was just the original schoolhouse that they had. You've seen pictures of that. Well, anyway, we started the school and we had a big disadvantage. Couldn't speak English. And I think I can remember they told me, you've got to learn to talk English now because you're going to start to school. But that was really a handicap when you got to school there. And you're going to talk English, you know. And it was really a handicap. So the teacher kind of divided up the classes. He put one class here and another one here. And I guess those who were more Norwegian didn't know too much. You put down here. So the thing I was impressed when I got into school was these little chairs that they had. She put in a circle there and she sat in the middle there. All these little chairs. And they fit so nice. All the little chairs there, just to fit all of us. I was really impressed by that. And of course, it was a problem that, excuse me. It was a problem trying to learn a new language and school at the same time. So I guess the teacher found it necessary to keep us in first grade nothing. And I remember when I came to school the next fall, there came all my friends marching in too. There was John Howard, and there was Rudolf Rauch, and Oscar Hendrickson, and Ernest Hansen, and Carlton Sagadon. There was a whole bunch of us, you know. We didn't know how to teach, so we had to spend another year in first grade. But we did manage to get through. So, and I think about how we had it the first year. I just don't remember what year that was. You know, out in the country they used to have what they called Norwegian school. And they'd have during the summertime, they'd have a few weeks or a month or whatever, I don't know. But we had that here, that one year, and Leva was along. I've got the picture, I should have brought it along.
Yeah.
I was going to bring it, but I think I showed it to you before, I'm not sure. And I remember, I'm not sure what year that was, but we had religious training and in Norwegian, see? And that's how come, I guess that's probably how come I'm able to read Norwegian today, which the reason I learned to read Norwegian, I guess, is there's so much history written in Norwegian. These local people, especially O.S. Johnson, it's absolutely remarkable the things that he had put down in family histories of people around Spring Grove. It goes way back. And that's what interested me. And that's one reason I kind of learned to read Norwegian, but I think fairly well. But I remember that Norwegian school, Leave, Solon, and there was Walter Gilbertson, and let me see, who were they? And there was Margaret Lee and Beulah Connell, and Olga Glasser. Well, I better not try to name them. I have to look at the picture to know that we all took what we call Norwegian school, see? And Hilda Jensen was a teacher. Her father was a minister, I think, in Blackhammer. Probably was here in Spring Grove now too, I don't remember. But she was a sister to Peter Jensen that had the baker here, and a sister to Mrs. Amundsen. Alfred Amundsen and Helen Amundsen were on that picture. And so was Thelma. So that's kind of reminiscent. Well, I don't know just what I should go into for this history. It was strange when I lived, see, down the old place there. That's one reason I spoke Norwegian, because, you know, you started school and all the kids that were from the rural area, from the country, they all talked Norwegian. When we went out to recess, we spoke Norwegian. Of course, the kids in town, they were more exposed to English, and they spoke English, and they were a little further advanced as far as that was. So when I was, when we lived, my dad built a new house, the house that I'm living in now. He built that in, I was 7 years old, I think. So I moved to town. Then, the ones I played with, like Donald Helen and Old Nansgaard and Carl Huck, they couldn't speak Norwegian. So then I had to start speaking English more or less, see. Otherwise, on the playgrounds we spoke only Norwegian. And I remember having speakers coming to school. It's probably pretty rough in the grades then, but we had a speaker coming to school and talked. We should speak English, and we should speak English when they're out for recess. We're supposed to get away from the Norwegians. And eventually, of course, he went away from it. So I don't know if there's anything I should really tell. I haven't really prepared anything. It just comes spontaneously. And whatever comes to mind.
Well, last year when we had our Passover supper, you gave a reading. Do you remember that one? Patty Tuckman.
Oh, you mean Patty Tuckman?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, I suppose. Patty Tuckman, yeah. Well, I can't sing. I can try. And if you just listen to the words, I don't know how many of you will understand those words. Patty Tuckman, have you heard of mine? No, Patty Tuckman. And there's Patty Tuckman. She knows Patty Tuckman. Well, I suppose I could try that. I don't know if there's something else I should say or not. It comes to me when I quit. But I should have wrote down and kind of organized something so I could have brought something more interesting to you. But some of these things, you know. I remember before I went to school, Harlan Bergston, Happy Bergston, he's a brother to Mervyn Bergston and Julia Guttormson. He stayed at our place and went to school. I remember we all talked Norwegian, you know, and I'd say, "Huh?" And he'd say, "I'm head the way hanging a shoot on." Disturbed me when you said that. But it probably made me quit saying hair. I don't know. So,
Tell us about your experience in flying, say.
flying?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, I did start flying. I remember the first, I could give you a little history of flying, I suppose. I think it was, I came home for dinner. And, see, all of us went home for dinner in those days. And I looked over in the field and there stood an airplane. And I heard the kids talking when I went home. Someone talking, there had been an airplane flying over here and almost hit the church people, you know. You know, that's the way people talk, see. Then I went in for dinner, and here come a couple of guys in white coveralls in and said we landed on your field and we'd like to take up passengers if you don't mind. So then they'd heard that, you know, flying, it was terrible. So finally, I went out and I got the first airplane ride. And that hooked me on flying. From then on, I just couldn't think of anything but flying. So that was in 1928. Barney Root came up here, that was on a Friday. He came up on a Sunday, he came up in two Waco airplanes. A couple of students came up, and they couldn't take up passengers. So Barney came, he had a Stinson, he was a pilot for Dr. Henke down there, and he'd gone to Chicago. So when he came up in that Stinson, a cabin plane, and landed, then he took up passengers all afternoon. They're just lined up steady, you know, I'm after you and I'm after you. That's why it was on Friday too. So that's how flying was really got started. And that kind of got me interested, and I was always involved in it. I did had 6 forced landings. That was kind of an experience too. When that motor stops, and you've got to get down, and you haven't got time. You're going down. That's all it's to it. You're coming right down now. You better have a field to land on. And you better hit that field too. So that was a little experience too. I've been in 6 of those. Cracked up one time, but got the airplane fixed again. So that's kind of can be kind of boring, all that stuff too. Yeah.
Sig, tell about the time that Melvin Trius was taken off with the tailwind and it caught him and flipped him upside down.
Yeah, that was a flying club. We had we had PA-11, and that's one that Donald Hindenburg owns now. He just Glenn flies it, but Glenn owns that thing. It was good flight, to tell the truth. And we had the runways at that time. We had the runways in east and west, and we had them north and south. And Melvin come down, and it was a terrific wind to see. Oh gosh, it was good. And I had the camera, but I didn't see, actually, I stood watching him go down that east-west runway, and he went down there, and just as he got at the end, see, and I think he made a mistake. But when you're going down tailwind, you've got to have that stick forward. If you're going into the wind, you'd better have that stick way back. But when you're going downwind in a strong wind, you'd better have that tail forward. It puts the aileron down like this, it puts the wind on the tail to hold the tail down, see? And just as he stopped, imagine he was just holding it wrong. There she went over like this and flopped over like that, flipped her right over. So, I didn't get that on camera, but when they came over and they raced the airplane again, I got that on camera. She lifted the airplane again. He did quite a bit of damage to the airplane. Broke the prop and damaged the wings and hauled it back into the hangar. So we got movies of that, because I had a movie camera at that time. I used to take a lot of movies. So we had a little experience in flying that way too. Marvin nosed over that J3 that we had later too on the field there. And Melvin had a few crashes on the field too. So we had a lot of experience on that flying. Yeah. And see, for homecoming, the field out to Bergrud Field there was the city rented the field for homecoming in 47. They had a commercial license on the field, and they rented the field there for those days. And they rented it for another year too. So the city paid rent for that field, but then, of course, they didn't want to do that anymore, and I wanted to fly, and I took out a private license on it and said everybody can fly on that field as I change the runways from one hay field to the next, but we can keep flying there. So we had about 3-4 different flying clubs at one time, and we did a lot of flying on the field. In 1937, Max Conrad came up and flew there. In fact, Tatro came up there with a Waco cabin plane for 3 or 4 places and wanted to rent the field for homecoming, flying in homecoming. And he was supposed to be the richest man in Decorah. They said, El Tatro Radios, you know about that? Yeah. So I have much respect for him. I can tell that story because it's true. So he came up and they said we had oats on that field. He said, we got to rent it to you. Yeah, we'll rent it to you if you'll pay the damage you do to the oats. And he would certainly do that. He would take care of that damage. So he came up that one day, and they flew north and south. The wind changed, and the next day they flew east and west because the wind had changed. And then when homecoming came, Max Conrad came up and wanted to fly. And I said to Tatro wasn't there that day. And I said to we rented to, well, he probably was or came. I said, we can't rent it to you because we've leased it to El Tatro down there at Decorah. So he talked to Tatro, I guess, and he was going to give 10%, and he paid him 10% of what he had taken in. And Tatro pulled out, and we never got a nickel from him. We went down there and they wouldn't pay us a damn nickel, so that's Tatro and mine. That's my estimation of El Tatro down there. But Max Conrad flew there for several days and took up passengers in his fleet too.
That was in 1937, wasn't it?
That was in 1937. You were probably out there and got a ride. I think I saw you out there.
At that time. In fact, I got a picture of his plane and over.
You have a picture of Tatro's plane?
No, not that Conrad.
Max Conrad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Max.
Yeah. So Max flew all day. He flew there 2 days in the field there. And he paid, that first day he paid Tatro 10% of what he'd taken in. But when we went down there to collect from Tatro, so he was out of state, we couldn't do anything about it, so it was left out. Yeah, well, I suppose the Norwegians, they always used to say, that's an old story too, that the dogs bark in Norwegian in Spring Grove. But I thought that has changed. A few years ago it has changed. And probably that has changed too now. They don't really bark in Norwegian anymore. They only bark with a Norwegian accent. Those things change, you know. Well, I'm probably taking too much time.
Well, no, we certainly don't mind. We certainly enjoy hearing your story, that's for sure.
Well, I'll probably, like I say, I'm kind of under the weather, you know. So I'm kind of pretty dull today. I could sing you Patty Torthy if you want to hear it.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear that?
Yeah, why, sure.
You do. Understand Norwegian, all you people? If I can remember the song. Han Patty Torthy, han var en flyttstig. Han var buckebeit och hade puckelvit. Han var lag av dörrt och såg för lite. För det ena ögat var bak med vite. Hejsju, faderaderaja, hejsju, faderaderaja. Patty Torthy, han slog sig på nacken. Jag tror jag fryser och går om backen. Hon är lika pen, men är stor och stark. Och jag på halva till stack och säck. Hon är något käftar med diger näse som sitter tämligen skatt i fjässet. Och är något saknat med tillrätt hår. Men pussen här i trullat jag. Hejsju, faderaderaja, hejsju, faderaderaja. Hon gick till och går och bort. Men han kunde inte se hon för bara bort. Så hinsa mor, ta en skrubb och kluta en litt. Jag tror det känner dig fria hit. Och du, sa Goro, en god du mor, i vaskar mig nog till jul i fjol. Och Per han flydde och han fick ja. Och en kiss på munnen han ville ha. Men Goros näser var allt för svär. Han rak ju fram på 16 års snö. Hejsjun, faderaderaja, hejsjun, faderaderaja. Och Per blir galen och kurset sig. Och Goro lilla nasa den är blyga i väg. Och mig ser på ditt nämnare. Så syns det kunde vara penare. Hejsjun, faderaderaja, hejsjun, faderaderaja. Och du, sa Goro, det stinger svin. Du kan ha missat munnen din. Du som är vad det skalla krack. Och då har du drag dig på kallarna skatt. Hejsjun, faderaderaja, hejsjun, faderaderaja. Och Per drog hem från dag och lej. Jag tror du vill längre dig gifter mig. Hejsjun, faderaderaja, hejsjun, faderaderaja. Men och går så vitt i min och väntar tryggt på sin rätta pris. Hejsjun, faderaderaja, hejsjun, faderaderaja. I don't know. I know. You see, another thing was, I got a kick out of Rosendahl's cartoons. There was a lot of intelligence in those cartoons, and a lot of things. If you analyze the cartoon, especially that one of these, he wrote there that they had these Haugland and had the Tutting lag, and there was a lot of those cartoons that really depicted a lot of things, like the Tuttings, you know. Well, now he's part of Tutting, but you know they had a little saying about these different Norwegians from different Greeks. Well, the Hollings was the Geneva, and the Putnings, they were Stoelbrothers. And the Hauglandings, now I'm Hauglanding, you know, they were supposed to be Chief. So they all had a little bit about each one that they kind of accused the other of. And those cartoons that Rosendahl had there, he had that illustrated, that one I really get a kick out of because you got, that one looks like John Grant, you know, John Grant used to be speaking, he's up there on the soapbox preaching, and there comes another behind him, they're reaching up, you know, trying to get his bottle or this, and here stands a couple of Hollings there, you know, and James, I think that one is supposed to be Jonas Peterson. He was a carpenter. He's standing with his saw there. And then was somebody, but I don't know what big they were from. They're supposed to be lousy, because he's standing there scratching like this. And then there was some that talked too. They talked a little strange. He says, "Allah räva med bygdom, har det blivit tu parumpum." Och jag know på jogger och källor. So I really get a kick out of that cartoon. It's really got a lot of things. Well, maybe I better. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. We enjoyed that very much. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Now, there are several others here that have a story to share with us this evening, too. So, who can we have? Carol, do you want to come forward now?
I didn't know
I was going to do anything tonight, but when I heard Sig, it reminded me of certain things. When I worked for Eldred and Laura, I was, you know, I had been married many years, and I was no longer a child. And Eldred used to say, "Ja, this I smurd." And I had not heard that since I was just a little kid. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And I wanted to tell you this. I'm trying to teach my granddaughter to talk Norwegian. And I'll show you how hard it is for someone to learn Norwegian. If you listen to this now, you'll hear it ryggen din in three different ways to use your rig. The fellow I learned this from is well known in town here, and he sang it, but I can't get him to sing it ever anymore. But I'll say it for you. Min kära Ola, hur har det varit? Du är som buskrutt på ryggen din. Jag nettopp kom från Vatleriggen och träska kvete med ryggen min. So it is hard to teach little tots Norwegian.
Good.
Thank you.
There's a little verse that I just occurred to me right now. You know, get started at Frenchman, no, the German. The German must have it as beer because it brings him good cheer. The Frenchman, he must have it as wine because it makes him feel fine. And the Irishman, he's got to have his whiskey because it gives him dizziness. And then here comes the Norwegian, and he drinks the whole damn business.
Leonard, do you have some stories you could share with us this evening?
I haven't prepared anything. Sig done a really good job on that.
Well, we'd love to hear. Well, we'd just love to hear it. You know what? We heard a few stories from you before, and there's some good ones. I think maybe you should share one with us again because we do have.
I don't know. I suppose like Sig mentioned, starting school, I run into the same problem. When I started school in the little Chomey school, the south of the Highland Church, I couldn't talk any English, and the teacher we had couldn't talk any Norwegian, so we had problems. And another thing, a year or so later, we had another teacher that if she caught us talking Norwegian out on the playground, we'd have to sit in after school. because we wasn't foreigners anymore, we were supposed to be Americans. So some of these things didn't always go real good for a Norwegian boy. But I remember one thing that really scared me a few days after I started school. The teacher had put me to cut construction paper in different colors, and then we weaved it and it looked like a checkerboard. And I thought that was really fun. So I had learned this, that I was supposed to raise my hand if it was something I wanted, and I raised my hand and the teacher nodded her head, so I walked up to the teacher and I said, "Kan jeg få saksa, klippe papir og lage en matte?" And poor teacher didn't know more than the man in the moon what I said. Her mouth fell open, and the rest of the children in the school, which was about 28 of us in all there, and they started laughing because they knew what I said but the teacher didn't, and it scared me, and I ran back to my desk and hid my face. And Jarla Clausen, that was our neighbor, she explained to the teacher what I wanted, but it wasn't any fun to make a map anymore. So, I guess I'll take care of it for tonight.
Here some time ago, you told us a real cute little story about this man that went to the doctor.
Can you share that with us again?
Oh, I suppose I could.
Oh, sure.
Borghild gave the doctor, Is that the one you mean? That he had a vondt I magen?
Ja, som har vondt I magen, ja.
Ja, Ola bar seg til Gunhild at han hadde så vondt I magen. Og dette gikk henne I flere dager. Og så sa Gunhild, I morgen skal du til doktoren. Nei, han visste nok ikke om det. Vel, I morgen kom, så sendte hun Gunhild til doktoren. Og doktoren så hun over tå til topp. Det ingenting som feiler du, sa han. Alt som feiler du du skal ha en liten dram før du skjegger deg. Å nei, sa han Ola, jeg vet ikke om jeg tør det, sa han. Så vi så Gunhild fint ut, jeg tar en dram, så jager meg ut, og da blir jeg husvild, sa han. Å ja, sa doktoren, vi skal stelle det, vi skal ha den opp på en stor flaske, sa han. Så skal vi kalle det medisin. Å ja, sa han Ola, jeg tror jeg kan greie det. Og han tog flaska si og reiste hjem. En par dager senere så var doktoren nede I byen som møtte noen Gunhild på gata. Hva skal det med Ola? Ja, ikke så verst, sa Gunhild, men jeg tror han blir splint galen, for I går skjegget med seg selv 7 enda.
You have another story like that?
Not right now.
Leonard playing telling stories, you know.
You talked about the doctor. I think there's a little story about a doctor, which I have told you before. Det var doktoren, han hadde trøbbel med øyet sitt. Og så resten til doktoren til å se om han kunne gjøre noe med dette øyet. Så doktoren tok dette øyet ut han, og så la han det I en kopp og skulle besøke og se hvordan det var. Ja, så doktoren hadde ut av rommet der, og så visste han ikke tål, så var det en stor katt der. Og så kom doktoren komme, så hadde denne katten etter opp dette øyet. Og doktoren han var så himlende gæren, men så denne katten hadde etter dette øyet, vet du, så greide på denne katten med bakbein og svingte ned mot storkarmen. Og der spratt det et øyet ut, vet du. Så begynte han å smile litt. Så tenkte han tok dette øyet ut av katten, og så la han den I koppen, og så kallet han en mann inni, og sette han dette øyet igjen. Og det så ut som det gikk ganske bra. Så en dag så var det bror til en mann som hadde hatt trøbbel med øyet, møtte en fygerpuss på gata, så sa han, hur går det med en måtte broras? Hur går det med brodin, sa han, som hade ett operation för ett öga? Och ja, sa han, det är ganska bra, sa han. Han gytter ganska gott, sa han. Men han har en fel. Ja, hur alltså fel, sa han, och där, sa han. Väl, men går ni över gata, sa han, så går han och skottar egentligen med den ena ögat, sa han. Så går han och skottar efter råtterhullen med den andra.
We thank you very much for your stories, boys. Now, who else has something they want to share with us? Gladys, why don't you come up and then we'll...
This is only new moon. Just think what it'll be like with a full moon. Kroshus,
great-grandfather who were not on arm. And he was born in Haugland in Norway, November 10th, 1817. And in 1844, he was united in marriage to Kari Haugland, and she was also born in Haugland in 1821. And 4 years after the marriage, in 1848, they came to Rock Prairie, Wisconsin. They stayed there until 1853, when they moved to Spring Grove, where they built their home on a farm. And on their journey from Wisconsin, they were with a train of other immigrants, which consisted of 18 wagons driven by oxen teams. They had 6 children: Ingeborg, Gunhild, Birgit, Guri, which was my grandmother, Nels, and Christopher. Guri was married to my grandfather, Embrit Melbrotten. They had 8 children: Kari, Myrah, Borghild, Doely, Josephine, Hans, Emma, and Ottilia. That was my mother, who was only 4 years old when her mother died. And let's see. So my mother didn't have any mother except her sisters kind of took over the housekeeping. So they had kind of a rough time growing up in those days. Well, that's about all I have to say.
Well, thank you.
It's just about my great-grandfather. And he was a Howling. I don't know if he was a Knee Howling or not.
Now, who else has brought a story for us this evening? Everyone must
I
have.
have a picture of him.
Well, maybe you should have brought that up to show us.
Well, I could pass it around.
How about you ladies? Do you ladies have anything to share with us this evening? Yeah? Did you bring a story?
No, I didn't really.
Thelma? Borghild? Borghild, I thought you had a story for us.
Well,
Sure you do.
I don't have much. Bring anyone. Up there. I'll tell you, when I was a little girl, I started school. First, I had 3 older brothers, and they knew English very well, so I knew English when I started school. But when I was home then, and my dad would talk to me in Norwegian, and I would answer in English. And so he finally said, you answer in the language you're talked to. If I talk to you in English, you can answer in English. But if I talk to you in Norwegian, you answer in Norwegian. So that's how I have kept up with my Norwegian.
Well, that was a good way. Norris, I'll bet you can tell us a story here. You can't? Oh, you are such a good storyteller. We should really have you tell us.
I can tell you another one that isn't really nice, I suppose. Det var i gamla dagar så brukade de ha körkar, vet du. Och så hade kuckaren, han hade en ung gutt och körde. Så var det köra teamässigt och de satt och körde ut i raden där. Så grannten, den gutten på kuckaren, så sa han, såg ut som han satt och studerade, så han. Så sa han, vad är det när du studerar och tänker så på våra far, sa han. Åh, sa kuckaren. Jag satt och tänkte på världen, sa han. Denna världen går runt och runt, denna hela världen går runt och runt, sa han. Så kastar en man hit, och så kastar en man dit, sa han. Åh, ja. Så körde han ett stycke till. Så satt kuckarna där och så öppnade och grannar på den här körkanten. Så sa han, vad är det du sitter och tänker så på, sa han. Åh, sa gutten. Jag satt och tänkte på detta Borghild, sa han. Detta Borghild går runt slick och runt slick. Och så kastar en drit här och en drit där.
Vernon, do you have a story to tell us? I'm Marlys, is that your name? And do you have a story to share with us? Something about your childhood?
Well, yes, I only had one grandparent. I was only 5 years old, I guess, when he died. That'd been my mother's father. I never knew any of my other grandparents. I had grandparents and great-grandparents that come to this country in 1872, 3 and 4. But I never knew any of the grandparents at all. But I never learned to talk Norwegian. My father didn't really speak a lot of it when I was growing up. I had a sister that was 7 years older than myself, and my grandmother passed away in May, and I was born in June. But my grandmother would not speak English, and so my sister learned to speak English or Norwegian real well. But,
What part of Norway did your family come from?
my father's was from Østertoten on my father's side, and my mother's side was from Norwegian, Hegseth. I guess I had never been back to Norway. I'd like to go back sometime, but
This is a wonderful trip, that's for sure. Nice to have you with us. Anyone else? Leva.
Yeah, I don't know. This is Doely. Take that down.
Why don't you come up here?
No.
Oh, yes, I think you should. Come.
I don't really know how to tell it.
Oh, yes, you do. Yes, you do.
No, it was just when I started school. I didn't know.
Okay, this is from when you started school?
Yes, I didn't know how to talk English, of course, and I came my mother had been to a birthday party at Borghild's aunt's place, and my first grade teacher was Miss Arneson, and she had said that I had come up and told her that I didn't know how to talk English. Now I can it so good. And of course that was a joke because I can it so good.
Why don't you tell us about the song that the Myrah girls wrote? Can you tell us something about that? Or the Storlie girls? there was a song that was written, and maybe you could fill us in on that.
What, I can't think of what it is. What do you mean?
I wish it would have been with me. But,
A song?
yes, remember that song that Sam sang it and you played it? And I think it was it the Solon Girls that had... Oh, I'm sorry.
I can't think of what song it is.
Well, I'm going to bring it next time.
Oh, I see.
I'll bring it next time. Okay. Thelma? Come up here and share something with us.
When you're talking about the Norwegian, the big reason it stayed by me is because my mother never spoke English until, I don't know, she stayed up there years, and I had two brothers that married girls that didn't understand Norwegian. So they lived in Illinois, and when Mom come back to our house, Leonard remembers that real well, she was speaking English. Because she had to try, because her daughter-in-laws couldn't understand Norwegian, so she tried, and by the time Mom passed away, she could talk it pretty good. We were really surprised. Good. But it really stayed with us, because my grandparents talked Norwegian. Of course, my dad did too, you know. Leonard's both did, and that was a problem for our oldest boy when he started school. Ronnie, he could talk very little English. And grandparents on both sides got to teach him Norwegian, you know, which we did. We talked a lot of Norwegian, mostly that. But I felt sorry for Ron when he started school because he could talk a little, but, you know, well, he's 54 years old now. But anyway, at that time, the kids all talked English, you know. Even if they could talk Norwegian, they still talk English. So I felt sorry for Ron because we hadn't talked more English to him than we did.
You told me a story once about quilting that was done. Was that on Leonard's farm?
Oh, that was where we live now, when the barn race, they call it. Mm-hmm. And then the neighbor ladies all brought baskets of food in, you know, to share with their noon meal, and then they put up a nice big quilt. It was 1912. And on the farm we live now then. And that's, we still have that quilt. Because Leonard's sisters, when Grandma died, they sent it down to our place. They didn't want the old quilt. So we still have it. It's made in a trunk, but we still have it. And it says 1912 in the center, like the prison work quilts they used to call it, you know. Mm-hmm. That's what they made.
Wonderful story. Wonderful story. Okay.
Thank you
very much.
The password to get into this community education meeting tonight is help with a question mark up in the corner there.
Okay, Jim, do you have something to share with us?
No, I really don't. I can think of just a little thing that my aunt talked about, and she grew up south of Spring Grove, and most of you people have heard of, there was a teacher by the name of Miss Norskog, and apparently she was quite strict, and she knew Norwegian, and she knew English too also. And this one day in class, one of the fellows from down south, about 2 miles south of town, he had made some remark, and Miss Norskog hadn't quite heard it, but anyhow he said, "Oh, who are fools may put a kid." When she picked up on that, she let him have it right then and there.
She was a very good teacher. Mathematics, she was. Have you ever heard the question that er du norsk eller er du torsk?
Ronnie, do you have something you'd like to share with us?
Well, I guess about the only Norwegian I learned when I was young, my folks would have something they didn't want me to hear, then they'd talk Norwegian. I had an older sister that was 10 years older, and then I'd translate it to her in English. I was able to pick it up. They thought they were saying something that I didn't understand, but I
couldn't get by with it. Morris?
Ronnie, Myrah.
I guess I got to tell about, I was born out in North Dakota, and
17 miles to Hettinger, and we had an open-top Model T, and I and my dad were going to town. And of course, I spoke mostly Norwegian too when I was young. And so I seen some sheep in the yard when we drove by, and when I come home I asked my sister Lila, I said, "Hva var det, Lila? Noe ull og noe øye, hva var det?" And I didn't know what sheep was because we didn't have sheep at home, you know. So
Morris has lots of good stories to tell that he tells his grandchildren. And he has one song in particular. Every time the little ones come, they ask him to sing it. It's, there was a man who had a goat. We should make him sing it, shouldn't we?
Yes, of course we should.
I think you should, Morris.
Yes.
Yes, because the grandchildren love to hear you sing it.
Sure. Come on.
I think so. Yeah. Why don't you sing it for us?
Come on.
there was a man, now please take note, there was a man who had a goat. One day this goat fell frisking fine, ate 3 red shirts from off the line. The man, he grabbed him by the back and tied him to the railroad track. And when the train hove into sight, the goat turned pale and green with fright. He gave the groans as if in pain, coughed up the shirts and flagged the train.
Marlys, would you like to share something with us?
I was just going to say, though, I talked to my son last night, and he is corresponding with the Hegseths over in Norway on his internet, and he can send a message over there in 3 minutes. And then they send a message, they've been sending messages back to him.
Isn't that wonderful?
Isn't that something?
We have the internet here too.
And how that can get clear across the ocean in 3 minutes.
Wyland is connected into that.
What?
Wyland is
Is he?
Marlys, thank you.
Oh.
Marlys, can you look here with me?
Yeah.
Hey, Marlys.
I think he's
Marlys, thank you.
like $20 for 30 hours.
How much?
About $20 for 30 hours. You can get 100 hours for $30.
Does anyone else have anything to share with us? We'd love to hear anything you have to share.
I'd like to just say one more thing. My mother is in the nursing home in Harmony, and she'll be celebrating her 100th birthday on July 8th. Last fall, she wanted her Norwegian hymnal, small Norwegian hymnal, and so I brought that into her then, and she, I don't know if any of you know this Arndt Broughton, a minister. He was a pastor at Henrytown for us for some time, and of course he used to go and visit Mother in the nursing home, and then she enjoyed that so much because he had tremendous voice, and he would sing with her in Norwegian then, and so, but I guess that's it.
Congratulations.
Pardon?
That's right. He's at Waterloo Ridge, that's right.
Sharice is with her too.
Yes, Georgia, we want to hear.
Well, no, see, our father was here the other day.
Yeah, that's there.
And he was down in Anna, and he told me, he said he can remember when he lived down with my grandmother's, but they would, I don't know if it seems to me, he said he rode by horse and wagon over to my grandparents' place in Blackhammer. And he said, well, when he got there, well, first he had the drums first. And then he pulled out the violins and they started dancing on the, he said the kitchen floor, but it had to be the living room floor because the kitchen floor was too small over there to dance on. But anyway, I mean, you know, that was the thing in the olden days. She would go visiting and before you knew it, you were dancing. And
Yes, and isn't it wonderful how the instruments played such a big part, you know, and they would all play together. They would just sort of pick up and play together. Our coffee, we have to walk with our coffee this evening. Thank you so much.
I have something that should mean a lot to all of us that are Norwegian. My husband and I traveled a lot. During Christmas, we took all the 3 children and went to Florida. And of course, you're sitting around on the beach down there with professors and doctors and whatnot, so you feel a little out of place anyway. You know, they all have these swell suits and umbrellas and whatnot. And we were talking different languages. And this one fellow came up to me, I know he was a professor of some kind, and he said, "Do you mean to tell me that you can speak 2 languages fluently and you're not teaching these children?" He said, "That's a gift," he said. And after that, I never was quite as ashamed of my Norwegian accent. And I did start to teach the kids, yes.
Good.
And grandchildren.
That's good. That's what I kind of do with my little ones too. I don't exactly take the time to sit down and teach them, but by just doing things together, like this little poem that I taught little Jackie, and we'll count, you know. Like on Sunday we were driving along, and apparently Tracy has learned a song in French in her class, and little Jackie knew something in Spanish, so we tried to sing Tracy's song, and then we tried to sing my Norwegian song, and then we sang little Jackie. So they are little words, like mine was Per Spellman, you know. But you know, it's just a fun thing, and that's the thing that keeps our heritage and our ancestors alive. Bring them back and make them a part of our lives. We need to walk to the end of the hall to get our coffee this evening, because there was another class down there. So we can go get our coffee.
Perhaps it's down here.
Is it?
I don't know.
Oh, I think it's up there. Well, wherever our nose will take us. That's where we're going to find that coffee and cookie. Say?
I just thought of something when you say lunch. There's a lot of funny things about these early Norwegians too, that were trying their best to speak English. And also, a lady, she wanted to be kind of fancy, and we had dinner there, and they passed her the sugar, and she wanted to say, "No, thank you, I'll take the sugar later." Instead of that, she said, "No, thank you, I'll take the sugar behind." So there are a lot of things like that that happened. Also, this fellow that come here putting stacking some hay, and he come over there and he looked at it, and you know, hell in Norwegian is to lean, see? And he went down and he looked at the stack, and I said, "They think that stack is going to hell on one side." So there must have been a lot of confusion in the days when here they were only Norwegians, and they got into some of the Yankees or the Irish, and to understand each other, I imagine they said a lot of strange things sometimes.
Yes, I'm sure it was difficult. It was difficult.
Genevieve, could I share a story?
Yes, please
Okay,
do.
The reason I know this, I heard this
Well,
story.
you better come up here so we can get you on there then.
Well, I'll just stand here.
No, you go forward. Go forward. Can you, will it?
Okay, here, you can come on this time.
I can't remember you.
My mother Sigrid was a good friend of Ruth Bergrud McConville. And I recall hearing this story. My sister and brothers and I heard the story when we were growing up from the folks. I imagine it is when Ruth was starting to do some courting. Ronnie Myrah's uncle, Newman Myrah, came to call on Ruth one evening, and they ended up sitting in the front porch. And of course, like you're talking about, the early Norwegians doing funny things, Sigmund's dad, Peter Bergrud, was born in 1870, I believe. And of course, he was curious to know, what they're talking about. So there was a crawl opening underneath the front porch. So back farther on the house, he crawled into the front porch. So he got sort of underneath, where they're sitting. And apparently, it must have scared your Uncle Newman off, because she ended up marrying Floyd McConaughey. That's the story I remember hearing. So I don't know, maybe he purposely made some noise to
I'm sure you have more stories to tell. Share something.
No, I think I'll just call him Chris now, but I'd like to have Sigmund just tell a story, Sigmund, when you were a kid and I think you were skinny dipping under the bridge. When down below the hospital there, when that curved bridge down there, when the arched bridge, and all of a sudden some women appeared up at the top, and you just tell what happened, how you felt about it.
Well, I'll tell you the way it happened. We went swimming in the Myrah pond. We always went skinny dipping there, see? And here we were skinny dipping, and here we saw them two ladies come from up at Myrah's, down at Leonard. I was alone too. I just had some Bobby Ruffy with me, I guess. So I dressed and ran down to the what they call the Myrah Bridge. There we had a good hole to swim there, see. And I was swimming around down there, and I looked up, and there stood two ladies up there on the bridge, see. And of course, I swam around there, and this one lady, she says, "You must be Hannah Berger's son," she said. I looked like her. I said, "No." No. So then they were going up to Kingston, see. And a couple of days afterwards, I hear we had company, and I went inside there into the parlor, and here was that lady sitting there, you see. So he tried to embarrass me, and I didn't get away with it. She was, I remember her name now, she was, she Mrs. Myrah? Not sure now. I think they were a little...
Is Leonard telling a story? Are you telling a story and we can't hear it, Leonard?
I was just telling Mike about that skinny dipping was kind of risky business. Ernest, Tron, and Caroline Ansgard and I was down on the Tron bottom and decided it would be fun to go in and swim. So we left our overalls on the bank and went in swimming. Next thing we knew, there was about 3 or 4 neighbor girls on the bank. And we didn't know what to do. We stayed in the deep water, and they didn't seem to be in any big hurry to leave. But we finally asked them to leave. But the bad part, when they left, they took our overalls along and hung them up in the tree way up in the woods. And then they sat up there singing for a while. Finally they walked off, and then we snuck up and got our overalls. No, I don't think I'll tell you it was.
I heard who they were. I wasn't I'm not sure what you're trying to do. You have something to share with us?
Oh, not really. I know that Norwegian brogue is easy to pick up. I never learned, my mother was Norwegian, but I never learned to speak Norwegian. And a high school friend of mine, after Vernon and I got married, I don't think Vernon's got that brogue anymore. Well, she said that's because you've got it too now. I figured that even though I can't talk Norwegian.
My sister-in-law couldn't understand and talk Norwegian. And of course we would talk Norwegian between ourselves a lot when she was around. And she says, "Why don't you swing your tongue the other way?" So she could swing her tongue the other way.
Not like my little granddaughter. She used to spend a lot of time with me. Amy did. And And of course, the mom was at my house, so we would always be talking Norwegian. And we were having coffee and sitting at the table there, and Amy was sitting at the table with us. And of course, Mom and I had been talking Norwegian, and all of a sudden Amy started going blah, 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 blah. And I said, "What's the matter? What are you doing, Amy?" "I'm talking like you are," she said. Does she do that too?
There you go, blah, blah, blah again.
Read with this Norwegian, speaking Norwegian, Myrah, my niece, they weren't going to speak, they weren't going to teach her Norwegian, you know, because that was kind of ashamed to be taught. But they talked Norwegian between themselves, and of course the first thing she was talking Norwegian. And then my other sister was married to an Irishman, and they lived at our place for a while. They lived there. And Marilyn, and my mother, and Ruth, and my mother, Marilyn's mother, between themselves they spoke Norwegian all the time. But you know, Marilyn, she was half Irish, and you could not say anything in Norwegian that she didn't understand. And she wasn't very old, but she learned it there. But she wouldn't speak Norwegian because one time she said something in Norwegian and everybody laughed. And after that, you could never get her to speak Norwegian. But anybody could say anything in Norwegian to her and ask her what they said, and she'd explain it every time. And that was just from listening. So it was hard to get away from that Norwegian.
When you live within, and when it's being spoken around you, you pick it up.
Well, they used to kind of look down on you a little bit if you spoke Norwegian. Now it's gotten really the other way around. Everybody'd like to be able to speak Norwegian.
Yes, no wonder.
There are only two kinds of people, you know.
Yes.
There are Norwegian and the ones that wish.
Wish they were, yeah. We have a lot of them that wish they were now.
I get a kick out of Leonard and our son Larry when they're talking. Leonard, he's talking Norwegian, and Larry, he's talking English. He can talk Norwegian, but his wife doesn't talk, and he kind of gotten away from it a little bit, you know, the other day. So there, and then keep going.
You gotta keep up with it around here.
Ronnie talks it more than Larry does now because he's around home more.
Stevie says he wished he could speak Norwegian, but of course he can't.
Well, if I recall right, I can remember the days that I wouldn't talk just too loud Norwegian back in high school days. We kind of sort of be by ourselves when we talk Norwegian.
Yeah. You others have it too.
Yeah.
Have you thought up of something you wanted to share with us now?
Oh, not really.
You haven't?
I talk about different ways to say things, and then I'll never forget my foreign exchange student, and that you'd offer her something to eat, say like, for example, ice cream or that, and she didn't really know just what the calories or how that would affect her. Will this make me tick? She was always so concerned about getting thick.
Okay, well, thank you all so very, very much for everything. And next week, Gordon Eddy is coming, and he had a presentation on a Norwegian wedding and something preparing for a Norwegian wedding, and then he's going to, I think, show, but he has something else he's going to show too, because he has asked for 2 screens and a overhead, and so he has slides and an overhead he's going to use. So it sounds like it's going to be a good presentation. So we hope you can all come back then and hear whatever Gordon has to say. And you're all welcome to go to the end of the hall and get a cup of coffee. We got so busy with our visitation here that, but that was kind of fun too.
Yeah.
So.
It's where they're headed, the driver said.
Yes. Mm-hmm. But you see, they can't have food in the media room, and so we have to have it in the hall. That's why we meet here, is because we can have coffee and cookies in here. Here in the home ec room and in the lunchroom. That's why we have always met in these rooms, because we get to have coffee and cookies here. Okay, thank you much.
Okay, nice meeting you.
Then we can come back here and
There you go.
That's it, the Spring Girl. The Spring Girl.
Community education.
No, I just read it.
Visiting over a couple of
How that has that is.
Are you still filming?
Well, we coming back in here and what's it
I'll just wait till they
They can bring their coffee back here and drink it here if you want to. Sure. Mm-hmm.
Do you have money?
No, I didn't bring mine along. I gotta have you.
They're coming back here.
I'll shut it off now and come back. How much will be?
You never know.
how much is to film this?
This is
7:30. 20 to 8, is that when you started?
seems like flashed up there. And this is a 2-hour film.
Oh, okay.
It is. Are you running it all?
Well,
Sig is telling us that we're...
But you see, when they offer, they didn't offer much either. They offer a quarter.
See you guys.
Yeah, sure.
But see, some of these old ministers were so terribly close to dancing.
wasn't there a story about, back up just a bit before we get you on. I'll tell you about the time at Reverend Sturge's Rectory we met how drunk who it was, and how that story go again.
Yeah, they said that. I don't know if all those things are true or not. They make good stories anyway. Yeah. Yeah, he said you met him on the street. He said, drunk again? Then he answered, yeah, Sam over here.
That's the way it was.
Yeah, my dad ran all the time. It's just like, all of a sudden she forgot, and I bet you heard her radio. Yeah. Yeah, every time I talked to her, it's an urgent. She yeah, I understood it real well.
videographers, I think, is having a
We talk about hearing.